Hello to everyone and the internet, and you are watching Culture Shock, the only show on the internet that knows how to separate an issue of culture from an issue of politics. I am Nathan of Washington, and this is the news. Alright, so Pope Francis says that wealthy few feast on what belongs to all. The wealthy few feast on what belongs to all, huh? What could he mean, and what is the reason for him saying this, exactly? Well, as it turns out, apparently, same old story, rich get rich and the poor get poor. But let's talk about the real reason why he said this. It's because he's a closet communist. It's exactly something a communist would say. Seriously, what belongs to all? Is he like Bernie Sanders, who says there shouldn't just be my money or your money, there should just be money? Am I right? Talk about anti-human nature. And talk about unchristian. You know what the Bible says about the poor? I'll tell you what the Bible says about the poor. Jesus himself says, and not necessarily an exact quote, the poor will always be with us, but care for them anyway, basically is his meaning. The Pope is essentially going against against Jesus' point. Take care of the poor, but they're always going to be there. He wasn't talking about sharing the wealth. And you know, honestly, I could be jumping the gun here, but it does sound awfully commie of him. Really. All I know for sure is he's just complaining about the same old thing of the rich get rich and the poor get poor. Who cares about what the Pope has to say anyway? It's like that line of that old Black Sabbath song. Would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope? Do you think he's a fool? I would say yes, I do think he's a fool. Not necessarily at the end of a rope, but he's definitely a fool. An ass clown, if there ever was one. Florida is suing Walgreens and CVS Pharmacy for selling opioids, which aided the opioid crisis in Florida. Florida is probably the one state that's been hit the hardest in terms of the opioid crisis, with so many people getting addicted to opioid-based medications and then ODing on them and dying, with over 100 people in Florida. And recently I said that the opioid crisis went to as far as Canada. Opioid deaths in general are absolutely tragic and could easily be avoided if we didn't have to take all these bottles of poison. And we wouldn't have to take the poison if we didn't eat the prepackaged, processed food. Now, personally, I am skeptical of meat eating. In fact, I follow a purely plant-based diet. However, I do not moralize or push my ideas of only eating plants onto others. But what I do push is avoiding the consumption of this processed garbage full of nothing but empty calories and harsh chemicals that make our bodies less solid, less healthy, and just generally overall for the worse. We wouldn't need these medications if we ate food that was essentially straight from nature. Whole food. It's okay to cook it. It's just not okay to buy it full of all these nasty, unnecessary things. It's like, you still want to eat meat, fine by me. Go ahead and eat meat. But hear me out. Take my advice. Eat it all natural. Don't buy the processed garbage that ruins your health and makes you need medication to survive. Certainly not with opioids on the market, killing people almost left and right. And on a side note, perhaps the reason why people act so crazy in Florida and we get all these Florida Man articles is because of the opioids. Just kidding. Just kidding. Not trying to be insensitive, Floridians. Just trying to make a joke. It's like, if you can't laugh at yourself, then who can you laugh at? If you want to avoid being hurt by people making fun of you, then make fun of yourself. Can't be made fun of, you make fun of yourself. But I sincerely hope that Florida takes them to the bank, that takes Walgreens and CVS to the bank for all they're worth over this. The opioid crisis is a complete disaster, and people who help to push it further should suffer the consequences. Because people are dying, and it's ridiculous. No more opioids, no more bottles of poison, no more medication. Become an all-natural eater with raw natural food. And if you feel like cooking it, go ahead, but buy it from a natural source. Don't buy market consumer goods. Avoid it however possible. And if you've got an illness, find an all-natural cure. I guarantee you that it'll be better for you in the end. Moving on. Environmentalism may have helped the spread of the wildfires in California recently. Now hear me out. That is something of an odd claim, but let me explain. Environmentalists in California have frequently prevented what they call prescribed burns because they don't like the nature of a slash and burn, which in this case a slash and burn, otherwise known as this particular type of slash and burn, is a prescribed burn, which is part of normal forest management. Clearing out fallen trees, management of local wildlife, etc., etc. But because they don't like it and they don't think human intervention should take place, naturally shit goes to hell in a handbasket. And this could have aided in wildfire creation by essentially creating fuel with those aforementioned fallen trees and other issues serving as fuel for the fire. And part of forest management is also setting up rules, and they could be getting in the way of that as well. Rules like, say, don't set up campfires here. This area is at risk. Now let me talk to you really quick about the possible current effects on air quality here in Washington and Oregon. If we look at the Air Now Washington page, Aberdeen's still looking good. They're in the green. So is Anacortes, Bellingham. Bremerton is in the yellow. They're at moderate risk. So there is some air pollution. The Cascade foothills east of King and Pierce counties, we're looking at all similar status. The Cascade foothills of King County, the current status is unavailable. And these are just the forecasts for tomorrow. So don't get worried. Chica Peak, no status. Chehalis, no status so far. Chelan, Clarkston, Colville, Confederated Tribe of Chehalis Reservation, Confederated Tribes and Bands of Yakima Nations, all NA. Darrington, current forecast will be 63. And so on. Now let's look at Oregon. Damn, they need to really fix this website. Hold on. There we go. Search externally through Google. Because, you know, that makes sense. So, Albany, Applegate, Valley, Ashland, Baker City, Beaverton, Bend, Burns, Cave Junction, City of LeGrand, Corvallis are all NA. Cotta Grove is currently exactly moderate at 50% air quality, and the current AQI is roughly at 58. Enterprise, no forecast, but 54. Eugene and Springfield, moderate. Grants Pass, not available. Hillsborough. So most of these are moderate, within a range of 70 to 52. So we are seeing some effects from the California wildfires, currently in Washington and Oregon. So it's possible, back on the note of the environmentalists getting in the way of things, because these people do not think logically and they're operating on pure emotion, which, thanks to the recent nature of political discourse in the last 10 years, we all know now what operating purely on emotion does. It basically turns you into an SJW libtard snowflake SWJ turdflake NPC. Moving on. There have been riots in the Netherlands over Black Pete, a character in their version of the Santa Claus story, where he comes by boat and delivers cookies and gifts. Black Pete being a sort of... Some say he's a caricature of black slave labor. Others say he's just like a tall elf who went down chimneys and got soot all over his face. And he's black from the soot. But of course, everyone's going to go for the racist model, because why not? The nature of the character is just the classic European model of serfdom, which was not like the Jewish model of serfdom, which was basically a benign slavery. In this case, it was more like someone who basically couldn't find a better job and found a fairly beneficent employer who gave them fair wages and fair treatment, where others would not. Now, making caricatures of different races is really not that big of a deal. Although there will be a talk later on of a certain something that pisses me off only because of the absolute hypocrisy and stupidity of the entire thing. The Black Pete character could be interpreted as racist, as old Germanic stories are just vague enough you could take it that way. But you could also just as easily take it in the fact that it's just his face is covered in soot, and therefore the riots are completely retarded. There are plenty of people who support displaying the character at this festival in the pre-Christmas season, and there's plenty of others who are against it because of their chosen interpretation. The guy in costume currently just has smudges on his face to symbolize soot. So, obviously, if you're going to support any one side on this, support the ones who are supporting the Black Pete character, who have chosen a decidedly non-racist interpretation. Moving on. Secret Sister. A pyramid scheme currently going around on Facebook. And how it works, basically, everyone gives a gift in a group of 7 and receives 6 gifts for that one. Up to 36 gifts can be received by a single person. And what this ultimately actually is due to the statistical numbers, if you look how this is set up, it's basically a pyramid scheme, and it's sort of like gambling. Now, I don't think gambling should necessarily be made illegal. That's government overreach. You know, it's our problem, not the government's. Let the people deal with it. And this is the people dealing with it. I'm telling you the news on this. Do not get involved with this sickening chain letter nonsense, and how these scams end up costing you and everyone else around you time, money, and reputation. These things can ruin you. But rather than get the government involved, because you know how they always make everything worse, let's deal with this ourselves. I tell you, now you pay it forward. You tell others. Get this around as far as possible. Let everyone know. Secret Sister is a pyramid scheme and will not end well for anyone. Please avoid it. Moving on. So recently there was an accident where a four-wheel drive vehicle was struck by a minibus carrying cheerleaders to a game. This minibus was carrying a total of 48 rail detonators, devices designed to explode when a train runs over them. These devices are safe. They are safety devices, which are the explosions are big enough that the train engineer will notice them, and it gives him reminders to slow down because he's going too fast. 48 devices spread out along the highway and in the grass surrounding it. 3 missing and 45 of them were found. And the police are still looking for the rest. They had to get the bomb squad out there because while the devices do not pose a threat to trains, they can pose a threat to smaller vehicles such as cars and even pedestrians. Now, I would propose that these devices from now on should be carried by possibly a different method, because accidents like this could happen and cause an even greater disaster. If these are indeed safety devices, then perhaps you should, deliver them more, shall we say, safely. I would propose maybe a helicopter, or hell, at this point, why not drone? That seems to be a popular proposal. Yeah, let's ship them by drones. Although the thing could just accidentally drop the things and cause the same disaster. But it would be less likely, I think, because there'd be nothing to hit the drone other than maybe other drones. Which would be less likely because drone shipments are pre-planned and have a set flight path. Whereas road disasters can occur because they're frequently not pre-planned and they simply have a destination, and you just, while you're trying to get there, you choose a way to get there. Most people, they go out and they get in their vehicle, and while they're on the way to their destination, they decide, oh, I'm going to take this turn, or I'm going to take that turn. There's an element of chaos, where in drone delivery there usually is not. Moving on. A P-51 Mustang was taken out during a display for a veterans museum, and one of the veterans that worked there and his son were on board this one, and they were doing a flyover display for a World War II reenactment. The plane apparently malfunctioned and crashed and killed both of them. R.I.P. nameless veteran and son that I couldn't find the name of. R.I.P. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. What I was talking about earlier. Nick Cannon, former Nickelodeon star, doing whiteface. and black people in generally doing whiteface. Now, like I said, doing caricatures of another race is actually kind of funny, in a way. It is kind of funny. What actually pisses me off is this nonsense about redefining racism as prejudice plus power. That it's a system of power to keep the black man or other minority down. When, of course, that's just black racism. That's just black people being racist towards white people. Revenge against whitey for slavery, for all the years of slavery. You know, if they were really pissed about slavery, they should go over to Europe and protest there, because there was way more slavery in Europe than there was in the United States. The slaves were bought elsewhere, but were not brought here directly from Africa in most cases. There were some places on the East Coast where we did have slaves of our own taken from the Afrikaners and the Boers, but they did this on purpose. They redefined racism, failed to redefine racism, so they could be racist towards white people and get away with it. Which is what they're trying to do right now. Whiteface is a racist act, and is the exact same thing as blackface. They'll defend it saying, oh, it's not the same thing because institutionalized racism and white power, yo. Really? Have you ever been able to factually prove that there is a system in the government designed to keep black people down? Have you ever been able to prove it? Of course, you would just claim, all the evidence has been destroyed. That makes it an unfalsifiable claim. There is nothing to examine. It is simply a belief you have, and therefore there is nothing to examine to turn that belief into theory, and then turn that theory into fact. It is just a hypothesis, a belief that there is an institutionalized system of racism, but you can't prove it. You yourself are being racist and being stupid and being an idiot, so stop it. Grow up, stop being a child. We're not holding you down. You are holding you down. That is all, folks. Tschüss.